This is a bit of a depressing map in more ways than one. It doesn't look particularly inviting, to be honest, even though it's called the Caverns. I actually think I'm going to go around this on foot. When I got to making this, I was very burnt out on map editing in general and was basically done with it, but kind of having a lot of fun playing around with the particle system. So I think that's probably the things I'm most keen to show off. Like these nice crystals and these little... So yeah, the crystals are stock meshes, but these little flares, whatever you want to call them, yeah, that's... Well, it's the texture that came with the game, but you know, it's more work actually getting that looking like that. And this very incongruous beam here doesn't really make a lot of sense. This is again back to kitchen sink approach. It's a kind of caverns, but there's plants and crystals and all sorts of things all over the place, even if it doesn't make a lot of sense. So yeah, there's some more not so good particle effects actually. Yeah, this is very... Yeah, it's very plain. I mean, it's just two terrains put back to back, which is something... I'm sure there's a guide which says, okay, the proper way of making a cavern is to model it as a static mesh, or you make a terrain and put static meshes as a roof. So you don't just take two terrains, put one, flip one on top of the other. And that's exactly what I've done. And you can see it doesn't look great with the seam, but you know, it's passable, I think would be the polite way of saying what it is. I mean, it's called the Cavern, so I'm not sure what I was really expecting loading this up. I mean, it's just, well, cavernous really. I'm just walking because it's such a small map that I think if we were doing a vehicle, we'd probably have seen it all by now. Yeah, I don't remember much of actually making this. I just kind of... what I said about slapping everything together. And this is completely kind of another incongruous space. Why does this exist? Why does that spin? None of this makes sense. So this is one effect I'm at least somewhat proud of. I can actually remember how to get up onto this. Yes, this is just a kind of moving walkway, very reminiscent of the tunnels and the conveyor belts and Foundry. So we've got these nice beam effects. Now, so I've got these particles which come along here and they actually disappear in these little sparks when they hit the end. Now I'm just going to do something. So one way you can do this is just set up a bunch of spark emitters and just, oh, it looks close enough. But this is actually quite clever. See, the sparks actually appear exactly where the particles hit this terrain. So that's a feature in the system where you can set the particle to, I think it destroys itself when it collides with something, i.e. that edge of the terrain. And you can also set it so that when it hits that thing it spawns another emitter, which is what those little sparks are. So yeah, it's quite cool. Well, you can't really see it very well at the speed it normally is, but yeah, so it does actually spawn a little spark where these things hit the end of the walkway. And of course now it looks hilariously fast at normal speed. Yeah, I kind of thought I might be a bit more enthusiastic about this one, but really what can I say? It's called the Caverns, and there really isn't much here. So I was trying to make things interesting with lighting and particle effects, but there's really only so much you can do. So I quite like this little, I guess, flare effect here. I think that looks quite nice. That pipe, we'll come back to that, I think. There's two secrets in this map. And there's also a little mistake here. It's not clipping the terrain properly. That was quite difficult to get the terrain lined up with the kind of organic terrain, or as organic as you can make in this game with a very rigid round pipe, but it looks okay, actually. Man, I'm actually kind of depressed just going around this. It's just so plain, even with the fancy rock effects there. I guess the thing about this map, if you showed people, Foundry desertification in this, they'd probably be surprised to know this was the last one I made. You'd probably think this was the first desertification was next, and Foundry was my, peak. Kind of strange to think that I made this very crappy little box here with these very plain decorations after Foundry. Okay, so that's just yeah, you'd hardly believe that I made this after Foundry because this just looks terrible. Is that another mistake? Yeah, it must be. But, this map is part of my history as much as any other is, so I guess I've got to show it off. I really don't have much to say about it. You might recognise that particle effect from Foundry. It's just a repurposed one from that. I think all these effects, the lava effect and that smoke, is just pulled from Foundry and tweaked a little bit. And yes, if I go in there, I die, so let's not. So that's me already circumnavigated the main areas of the map, so we'll just go to the central node, which is the one which is kind of interesting at least. See, on the other side you've got that, it's not really a conveyor, but you know what I mean, the kind of particle tunnel, whereas this is just a simple mover. It's got some nice dynamic lighting effects on here. I remember thinking this was really cool. Oh, it's a little moving train, you get in it, it's got these cool lights in it and things, but yeah, it's actually pretty, not the best thing I've ever done, but I just wanted to put it in. So yeah, the central node is the one which is, okay, I'm just going to go across here. I just wanted to show off this very interesting tunnel with a fan on top of it. Not really. So this central node is the one which actually looks kind of decent, and again with the kind of sun effects coming through there. So that's at least kind of visually interesting, if only because of the particle effects, not anything else. One of the comments about this map when it was played online was it's very claustrophobic. It's called the Caverns. People have built... My opinion is, if you make the ceiling so high that it doesn't restrict anything, what's the point in making an underground map at all? The whole point of setting this underground is to make it claustrophobic and kind of limit your vertical height. It's a bit silly to me to say, okay, it's an underground map, but functionally you could take the ceiling away and nothing would change because it's so high. Maybe I pushed it a little bit too far, and I feel like it could have been more three-dimensional just because it's, enclosed. You can still have hills and valleys, and I was trying to do that on one of the other nodes, make little hills and ramps, so it's not quite as... Not just that it's claustrophobic, but it's flat claustrophobic. Yeah, I've gone round this quite quickly. I found it took a while, even desertification took a while, but I don't really know what to say about this other than... Well, this is Foundry, this is the Caverns Beta 6. Now, on my system I have Beta 3 and Beta 6, I don't know where the other ones have went. I guess that's a mystery for all time. This is a kind of cool tunnel effect. The green discs, that's the fan effect underneath the Manta's fans, the kind of dust swirl. So that's actually the same particle effect, just coloured green. There's a nice flare down there, and so even the way those particles are spinning is quite interesting, I think, and there's all sorts of... There's still a lot more could have done with the particles, but I was really getting my head around much more how to make it all kind of work and look nice and whatnot. So yes, this felt like an extremely quick tour, but I guess there's just legitimately not much to actually show off. I guess that's the problem with such a kind of... It's not a tiny map, this, it's got enough kind of area that's not incredibly small. But yeah, it's certainly not exactly big. And vehicles feel quite strange in this. Obviously in the Manta you can't really jump. obviously flying vehicles would be, I could put on a flying vehicle, like, you know, a Raptor or something, just for a joke, I suppose. And the question is, can you drive a vehicle all the way around the thing? And you can, but by default, the way the vehicles are set up is they flip upside down, you automatically exit them. It's a kind of anti-frustration feature, so you don't just get stuck upside down in them. Which unfortunately means you can, in theory, try and drive around this, but as soon as you get kind of up towards the top, you just pop out the thing, which is kind of annoying. You can turn, I think you can disable that effect. You'd have to make a custom vehicle class and blah blah blah, but whatever. I'm going to turn that sound down a bit more. That kind of weird effect in the distance is actually part of the skybox, because the view distance is such that beyond a certain distance it just fades, it just kind of stops drawing, starts drawing the skybox, which is when you get some slightly strange effects in a map like this. It feels like I've hardly shown anything off, but there's nothing more to show off. It's such a small map. And I have very little to say. I played this online once, at least once, maybe more than that. But I don't remember much about it other than somebody saying, "Oh, it's absolutely terrible" in the chat the entire time. And you know, I'm not averse to criticism, not in the slightest. But you know, to talk about constructive criticism and whatnot, rather than just kind of ranting about it. I mean, nobody's obliged to like every map you've made. Nobody's obliged to like any map you've made. There's certainly maps I didn't like, and not for technical reasons, like, oh, you know, it looks terrible or it performs terribly, it's full of glitches. All those maps that exist, they're maps that I just simply did not like the gameplay of, and for some people, this map would be that. So, you know, so I certainly don't have an issue with people just not liking it, but, you know, maybe not a bit more constructive than just, oh, it's abysmal, please do something. So, this little pipe here, I don't think this was in the version that was actually played online. I think this was added, blown effect there. I think that was actually added in this version, it's never actually been played. So, you go around and you see these little poles and lights on them. And if you shoot them, that happens. Now, there's a bunch of those lights on poles scattered about the level. Now, what's supposed to happen is once you've shot all of them, this little pipe thing will open. Now, not only do I lack the effort to go around and actually do that, you have to do it in a specific order, and that's not the way I actually wanted it to be set up. It should be that as long as you shoot all the light poles in any order, that the thing opens, but the way it was programmed, it's not really programmed, it's just setting a bunch of triggers and stuff. You have to do it in a specific order, and there'd be no way of knowing what that order is. So it wouldn't actually have been a particularly great secret, because you'd have no way of knowing what order is, but let's just say you did do that, or I fixed it so that just shoot all the light poles, this opens, this would slide down. You enter here, and I'll put my walk command back on. This is a little secret, I guess. What is a secret? That's a double damage, the purple one, so that's basically going to give you full health, full shields, but I don't know if you can tell what's about to happen here. It's quite a crushing fate, perhaps, a crushing revolution as to what happens if you actually come in here and get these pickups. Splat! Now, you might think that's just a little bit cruel, and it is, but it only happens if you go for the very last pickup, so I think you can pick up the shields, but as soon as you go for the double damage, that's when the trigger comes in that actually traps you in there and kills you. So I guess it's a little, there's going to be a little sign saying don't be greedy or something like that. Maybe I should have put the double damage first, but it'll just be, I mean, you could only do it once as well, there's no practical way of resetting that. I mean, I suppose you could have programmed it to reopen back up and maybe reset all the other movers and whatnot. It would be doable, but, you know, quite a bit of effort for a silly little gag in an online map. Now, there's another secret, and I'm going to have to get my bearings here. It's okay, I might as well just demonstrate. Actually, I might just be able to get this actually. So you're looking down here, you don't see anything other than that light. Now, this might not work. So you see those two rocks, which you can't see from up here, they basically phase into existence as you come down here. And you have to essentially land right between them, and you end up in here. Nobody's seen this, by the way, because this wasn't in the map that was played online. So this is a little view of the level. So you're just a little bit outside the main terrain. You can actually get a proper look at the, proper-ish look at the skybox, which is nice. And there's nothing you can do in here. I think, again, I cannot remember if this was in the version that was played online. I don't think so. But, as I say, we're going off of over decade-old memories now, so who knows. And that's just the texture on the side of the skybox that you can't see from inside the middle of the level. Because when you're in the main level, all you can see is the clouds and the sun, so I didn't really care about what texture I put on the rest of the skybox, but it's kind of like default, not default text, one of the first textures that loads in the editor, and it's actually the texture for the health pickups, I think. Whatever. So over there you can see the, the funny pipe. So somebody else, that's interesting, is that, so one pops down when you shoot all the things, and that lets you into the pipe. And then the other one activates when you go along to the very end. So that one right there that the crosshair's pointing to, that one's the one that goes up and traps you, and the other one goes along and splats you. So I think somebody would actually still be able to go in there. Because I say there's no way of resetting it, but I think once that was open, anyone could go back in and pick up the health pickups again if they knew not to get the last one. So maybe that's a kind of open secret people could have. And that's a nice view of the particle effects as well, in the kind of central hole, tunnel pit, whatever you want to call it. So that's a nice overview of the level in general, I think. So let's just see, I wrote something somewhat embarrassing in retrospect in Foundry, so let's just have a look at what I wrote here. Yeah, so another glorious, used it in Project Dog Waffle apparently, so yeah, again, 2008, so 17, so a couple of years older than I was when I made Foundry, but there we go. And that's a column of water, because I think the game does sort of obey conservation momentum. Like, I think if you fall at very high velocity through a teleporter, I think you do retain it. So because you'd be having a huge amount of velocity going down that pit, you'd essentially come in here and splat, so the water just provides a soft landing. So that's what that's about. And I think this just takes you straight back to the... I thought there was a teleporter in here. Maybe there's supposed to be, which just takes you back to the central node. But I guess not. So I have to blow myself up. So that was a short. It's probably ran on for too long as it is, and I've just been rambling. I just simply do not have much to say about this. So it's never played online very much, so I can't really talk much about gameplay. It's an attempt to be different. I guess it is. No, something just happened in the game. I think it must have reached a time limit or something like that. I don't know. I don't know if this has bot support. It might do, but I don't. Is it really worth showing off? Probably not. So I say probably not, just after I've added a bunch of bots. So yeah, I mean, as I said with desertification, on earth is this? Oh dear. So this is a little another glitch. So once again I have to kill myself because I just fell into this pit which really shouldn't exist. So with desertification there was actually technical issues stopping me from doing bot paths. As I said, the drawbridges were just wouldn't have worked with bots, and I could have patched in some stuff around that. Whereas this is just a very conventional layout, there's nothing untoward going on here with bridges or toggleable elements or anything, so this actually would work with bots, so I've added some in, but Again, does any of this really matter? Not really. And again, the bots are on, I think, second easiest difficulty, so yeah, they're not exactly hitting me even though I'm standing completely still and there's loads of them. So it does seem a bit less lonely now, doesn't it? And it seems a little bit bigger when you actually see, I guess, people, you know what I mean, people in this. I did add a Goliath in here. You know, a tank in a map this enclosed is, I guess, a little bit questionable. Because a tank, it works off of splash damage, and it's kind of compensated for by the fact it's a slow lumbering vehicle. It's very vulnerable to kind of height advantages. You can rain down fire on it from above. So putting a vehicle with very high splash damage in a tight enclosed map with lots of surfaces for the splash damage is a little bit of a questionable decision. But it would also be very easy to focus fire onto it, so maybe it wouldn't have actually been a problem at all. And again, this was played online at least once, and I played it online at least once, so maybe, I don't know. So yeah, it seems a little bit more lively when there's a bunch of brainless bots and me just wandering around, but I don't think there's really much more to say about this.